thank the witnesses, Dr. Glynn, for his attention and time in Kildare. We've had a few conference calls in the last few weeks, and of course Professor Philip Nolan is well known to me as President of the local university. I represent Kildare, which is in its third lockdown now. The initial lockdown, the localised lockdown, and the second localised lockdown. And that has obviously had a devastating effect on the local economy, but also upon the public at large. I think confidence and morale is at a significant low at the moment as people try to grapple with the effects of this, and it is psychological as well as being economic. People are prepared to get on with it and do the right thing once they can understand it and once they can, I suppose, buy into it and support it. But I've listened to the testimony of both witnesses, and both witnesses have spoken about the workplaces and the clusters that have emerged in recent weeks. And one of the questions that I, as a public representative in the county, I've been asked repeatedly, and will be asked again this evening when I meet with the Kilcock Business Association, so it's a live issue, are saying to me why, I take the example of Kilcock, where there's one case in 2 months identified, are we in lockdown? Why is the entire county in lockdown when it appears to be confined to a few workplaces? Now, I asked this question of many people, including the Equine CMO conference call last week and many others during the last few weeks. Why are we in entire lockdown? And the answer I was given, which I believe because I believe the public health advice, is that the entire county has incidences and there are cases everywhere, and it is actually spread beyond those initial workplaces or clusters. But I think we really need to demonstrate that, and I think to drive buy-in and to get public support and acceptance for the measures, because people will follow the logic, people will follow the evidence themselves if they have it. We need to make that data available, and it was something that I called for, and I know the Taoiseach even called for it on yesterday's radio interview and agreed it should be made available, that electoral district level data, that micro data at ED level, which is actually, I don't think, low enough to embarrass anybody with GDPR, etc., but it's high enough for people to understand if it's in their town or if it's in their townland. There was a set of figures made available on the 12th of August. That was the first set of localised figures since June, so there was a 2-month gap. And there haven't been any ED level figures made available since 12th of August. So effectively we have one set of figures. If we go back as far as June, we have one date on which localised figures are available. Nothing before, nothing since. It's really important, and this is a live issue. This isn't an academic issue or an esoteric issue or something we can resolve in a fortnight's time. Kildare is in lockdown today. Businesses are struggling today. The people are struggling today. And we don't have figures for today. We don't have figures for yesterday. We don't have figures for tomorrow. So can we, as I know, I understand government are in entire agreement. The Taoiseach confirmed that to me, and he confirmed it in a radio interview yesterday. And I believe, I don't think there's anyone that disagrees, and yet the information isn't there. So perhaps, I'm not sure who's best placed to answer that question, perhaps it's Dr. Glynn, but can that data be made available as a matter of urgency? Because I think it would really drive public support for these measures if they could see in their own towns what the situation was. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. I might start. So first of all, the dashboard is due to be updated before the end of this week. But I would just caution more generally, and just to your point, the figures for Kildare have been given every single day over the past number of weeks, and indeed for Laois and Offaly for the 2 weeks in particular. What I would caution is that for many EDs there's been less than 5 cases. Many of those cases are families, extended families and family clusters. So we need to be careful about what we give out at a point in time. More broadly, I know there's a perception, it's accurate that the number of cases in Kildare in particular was driven by these clusters in meat processing facilities. But the people who work in those meat processing facilities live, socialise, travel, interact with people all over the county. I've said previously that the county boundary is crude, but we had to take some crude measure, and as we've heard earlier, the cases weren't confined to Kildare. We have seen cases in Carlow and Wexford, for example, linked to the issues in Kildare, thankfully at a lower level. But in broad terms, we had to pick a geography. As we've said previously, and as the WHO has said, at times you have to move fast at the enemy, at the cost of perfection. And so I'd put my hands up and say that. But in saying that, when we make these decisions, we have a set of data in front of us at a point in time, and we have to make recommendations and decisions based on the potential for what might happen over the coming days. And if I just go back to our meeting on the 7th of August, where we made those recommendations, on that day there had been 150 cases in Kildare, in the previous 14 days, but 128 of those had arisen in the previous 7 days. So we were very justified at that point in moving quickly to prevent community transmission. And to echo your own words, I do want to acknowledge in particular the work and the buy-in of people in Kildare, notwithstanding their anger and their frustration about what's happened, but their actions have prevented widespread community transmission, and the situation does continue to improve there. I might ask Professor Nolan if he wants to come in on that.
I'm afraid if he does, it'll have to be a reply in writing because I have to move on to the next speaker to keep.